Clara, what are your favorite ballets? Coppelia, Nutcracker, and Cinderella.
Clara is a 10-year-old that loves to dance. So when this little ballerina started dancing to one of her favorite ballet routines, the home video camera was turned on. But little did anyone know what would happen next.
There were several DVDs of ballets that we had around, and there was one in particular that she returned to frequently called Coppelia. And one afternoon this past summer, one of our excellent therapists, Marielle Yap, decided to just videotape Clara dancing. But it wasn't until she took the video feed from the original ballet and put it in the bottom right-hand corner of the video that we saw just how accurately Clara had memorized every single move and nuance and emotion of this entire extended ballet.
The video was posted on YouTube and within hours went viral. People were amazed at the fact that Clara had memorized every intricate step to this ballet routine.
My mouth just dropped. I was like, and Mel had called me the night she had put it together. She said, "Lisa, you've got to see this. This is amazing." And she sent it to me, and we just watched it over and over and over again, just stunned at how talented she was. We couldn't believe it.
Literally overnight, this little girl from Toronto became a YouTube sensation.
It went up, I think it was on a Thursday night, and by Saturday morning it had made news somewhere in Australia, Taiwan, and I'm not sure, Indonesia or something like that. A number of American outlets, so NBC, CBS, Huffington Post, Daily Mail in England, and other news outlets in Norway, Sweden, Finland, Romania, Spain. I'm sure I'm not getting them all, but yeah, so many that we really couldn't keep track of it.
Now, for any of you who've ever taken dance lessons, you know how challenging it can be to memorize a whole dance routine. So what Clara is able to do is quite an achievement. But Clara was diagnosed with DiGeorge syndrome and is also autistic. In fact, her parents were told when she was born that she would never walk or talk. So what Clara is able to do in this video is quite amazing.
Clara was born with something called 22q11 deletion, or DiGeorge syndrome, and that hit her really hard with major health issues such as a heart condition. Her nasal passages were blocked. She had floppy airways, or something called bronchial and tracheal malacia. She spent the first 16 months in hospital undergoing surgeries and just receiving medical treatment because she was so fragile at that time. She just kept on fighting. Like, she's a fighter, and she came home at 16 months. But she still had major challenges at that point. She couldn't walk, she couldn't talk. We basically had a hospital room here in our house.
She was trached.
She had a tracheostomy, and so with that comes all sorts of challenges. And how do you deal with a child like this?
The challenge that occurs to any person when your child is so sick and faces such an uncertain future is that it puts a pressure on you. And as Christians, we can respond by getting angry with God and saying, we deserve better than this somehow. Or we can respond by considering it pure joy when we face trials and temptations of various kinds because of what God is trying to do to us through this kind of a situation. I am not thrilled that my daughter faces all of these challenges, but when any Christian faces challenges like this, you can either react like Job's wife and say, curse God and die, or you can react like Job and say, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. It took a lot of kicking and screaming on my part, but I am definitely in that second category now.
But if dealing with Clara's already growing list of health issues wasn't enough, Lisa, who had worked with a professor who diagnosed children with autism, noticed Clara's behavior first.
It was really hard to convince the professionals that this is what I was seeing and this is what I was thinking. So we didn't get an autism diagnosis till she was pretty much 4 years old, and then even at that point, it was difficult to convince the psychologist that this is a child who needs therapy, because again, they still thought she was mentally retarded. So over time that happened. We got a cognitive assessment done and proved that she has some developmental delay, but she doesn't fit the definition of mental retardation. And so over time we just put things in place and eventually realized that we had to do something to help her with the autism.
Because we're all listening, and Cookie Wookie's listening too, right? All listening to you. Okay.
In Ontario, funding is available for autism treatment, but the waiting list is long, and in most cases, funding only lasts up to the child's 6th birthday, causing many parents to look elsewhere for treatment options. That's what the Bergs did.
The funding that's covered by Ontario is IBI funding, and because it was such a long time before Clara qualified and before we actually got to the top of the wait list for funding, I basically started looking on our own to see what we could do to help her, and we started a different autism program. And because she did so well on it, we had to decide, do we drop what we're doing with the IMTI program and change to IBI, even though she was doing so well? We decided to stay with the IMTI program because it was really working for Clara. Like, she just went zoom on an upward incline trajectory, doing really, really well. And at that point, she wasn't speaking, she wasn't talking, she was walking, but she was not overly steady. Like, her muscle tone was still pretty weak. She was very young for a 6-year-old. We still had to carry her around a lot, or in a stroller when we went out. She still needed a lot of assistance, and now she's 4 years later. This just sort of developed and blossomed into this lovely little girl, and she's very outgoing now.
Yes.
You know, one of the first things that happened, I remember when she was 2 weeks old in hospital, the doctors pretty much gave her, they basically were ready to write her off. That was a difficult thing to hear, that even though they had a newborn baby and they have no idea what sort of promise or potential this child has, they were ready to write her off immediately. So, I mean, I guess over the years, the amount of work that we've done, but not just through us, but I mean, Clara has had to find it within herself to be willing to do it, and she has. And it's amazing to see. Like, this is a little girl who we were told wouldn't live, wouldn't speak, wouldn't walk, wouldn't talk, would be in and out of hospital all her life, and that just hasn't been the case.
But this past March, Clara's partial funding was cut, and now the family struggles to keep her therapy going, holding garage sales and fundraising events to raise any funds they can for Clara's care.
And we had different sources of funding that came in that covered probably up to half or a little bit more than half of the cost, but that has run out now, and so part of the reason why we posted the video on YouTube was to do some fundraising to help us be able to continue doing this type of therapy with Clara.
And Roger and Lisa refused to give up. Since the YouTube clip went up, the family has received quite a bit of financial support, many choosing to donate to Clara's therapy fund. But for the Bergs, seeing their child excel is most important to them. And seeing how far their little girl has come over the years has given them hope that Clara will reach her full potential.
She's a fighter, and she, for all intents and purposes, she should not be here today, like, based on what we went through and what she went through as a baby and over the first few years. But I know there's a reason for her to be here. Like, I mean, God has kept her here. God has a purpose that He's using her for, and it's interesting to wait to discover what that is. But I'm starting to see glimpses of it now, which is kind of neat.
For more information on Clara Bergs and how you can help, go to our website and follow the links. In Toronto, Ontario, Magdalene John, 100 Huntley Street.